interview this week, Richard Masters, he was talking about Man City a little bit. Didn't give really a lot away on that case, but he did say the Abramovich breaches, the admitted breaches, are now reaching a conclusion. Chelsea. What do you think the likely outcome for that would be?
I think those are very serious, and they're quite different from the City case in that they're admitted. We don't know the full extent of everything Chelsea have admitted and brought to the attention of the Premier League at the same time they brought it to the attention of UEFA. And whether there are more things that have been discovered since, because there was a whole load of transactions that were uncovered as part of the Cyprus papers, which was another leak that came after Chelsea had self-reported. So it may be that there's a combination of admitted breaches and then a whole load of additional breaches that have been discovered since. But either way, the conduct is admitted by Chelsea, and therefore the case will be very different from City in that the charges will be potentially laid against Chelsea, but there won't need to be this big long hearing. The hearing will simply be a case of considering both aggravating factors and mitigation to a sentencing and a sanction. So it won't be they won't need to effectively prove their case, because it'll be similar to a criminal case where somebody pleads guilty and really the hearing is just about sentencing. So I think it looks very serious. I mean, if the reporting of what they've admitted is correct, and it seems to be, effectively what's happened is over a very long period, number of years, Chelsea signed very many players in competitive situations with other clubs, and then didn't disclose the truth about those transactions, either in their accounts or in submissions to the league. So that's a pretty serious allegation, in many ways similar to some of the City allegations, and it's admitted by Chelsea, and that's the problem for Chelsea is they have admitted it. So although they will get mitigation for the admission, there's no question that they will get a discount to whatever sanction is laid down, and it'll be a very big mitigation, probably something like 30-40%. So that's the positive for Chelsea, but the seriousness of it means that the penalties could be very big, and they may not just be transfer bans, they may not be just financial. It seems to me that if you look at taking Willian as an example, they signed Willian by paying his agent. I think the allegation is they signed Willian by paying the agent significantly more than Tottenham, who were close to signing that player. Similarly with Hazard. And if those things are proven, then they've clearly had a sporting advantage, because they're buying players that had quite an impact. So we'll have to see. It does look serious, but until we see the sort of fine details to what they've been investigating for all this time, given that they have been admitted, then we won't know for sure. But my gut feel is this would not just be transfer bans.
And then it's emerged that Trevor Cahill has been banned from first team facilities at the club. Could the club potentially be breaching employment laws by that action when he's not actually done anything wrong as such?
Well, the PFA have got involved in cases like this before, quite frequently, and certainly on the face of it, there looks to be potential for a claim for constructive dismissal, and they're certainly making it very hard for him to perform his trade as per his contract. Clearly, nobody wants to go down that route, and the last thing a player wants to do is end up effectively taking a chance of not turning up for work and saying that, and trying to claim that Chelsea have breached the contract, because if that goes wrong down the line, whoever signs Chalobah could be liable for paying some quite considerable compensation, or Chalobah himself could be liable for paying quite considerable compensation back to Chelsea, especially where his value is, let's say, 20-25 million pounds. So it's quite a risky situation. But on the face of it, you can't just start effectively disenfranchising certain players by banning them from certain areas of of their workplace, and guaranteeing that they can't play football to the standard to which they're employed. So I do think on the face of it there is a potential claim. If it's true, I mean, maybe it's not true, I don't know. But you would think that the most likely situation will be that he will leave the club in the next 2 weeks, and that will therefore resolve itself. But I do think there is potential for certainly there's potential for the PFA to be involved in resolving the issue. I think that's for sure.
Mm. And Chelsea's activities have confused many people over the last couple of years, really. I mean, this week they've given Cole Palmer a 2-year extension to take his deal to 2033. Sorry. Why would the club offer those terms out?
You obviously want to secure your best assets. That's, I think, reasonable. I suspect that Chelsea are following a American sport strategy, which typically involves very long contracts, and they believe that will give them the power to dictate what happens when to their footballers, and they won't lose people on Bosmans, and they are not that concerned about the liability that goes with a very long contract. And perhaps they have clauses in those contracts that allow the club to terminate at certain times in certain circumstances. We don't know. But on the face of it, one, it's a unique approach, and two, it looks, I would say, in a football sense, it looks like madness, because we all know that footballers are less predictable than American sportsmen or women, and therefore you can end up with a situation, as we've seen many times over the years, where you have a player on a very long contract that you simply can't shift, and the liability is enormous. I mean, if you look at, for example, I was looking this week at Calvin Phillips at Manchester City. I think City signed him for a relatively reasonable price, about £40 million, when the player was on top of his game. One of, I think he'd just come off the back of the Euros, where he'd been one of England's best players, and paid £40 million and signed him on a 6-year deal. 2 years later, the guy, or maybe with 3 years, maybe this will be the 3rd year of the contract, the guy looks almost unsellable. He goes off to Ipswich on loan, City subsidising, I suspect, subsidising the loan, subsidising his wages in that loan deal. And with the prospects whereby if he was to not perform particularly well for Ipswich, then effectively you've got a liability for another 3 years on his contract that you've got to pay. And the player could be on, I don't know, £7 million a year for another few years, and the player has very limited value. So those are examples. There are loads of examples. I mean, Chelsea have got a whole raft of examples of that nature. Chilwell is a good example, where he's on very big money. He's got a very long contract because he recently extended it, and he's not part of the plans of the manager. So one, he's not attractive to other teams because he's so expensive, and two, Chelsea don't actually want him. So these are real problems, but Chelsea seem to be very relaxed about them. I don't know. I think with a kind of financial head on, it seems strange to me.